Hello, my dear friends. Welcome in. Drop your things, get cozy. I'm so happy to have you here today. Today is a special milestone of an episode. It's episode 15 of Lead to Gold, and this is where we have officially passed the 6-month mark of this show being a thing, and I'm so excited. By the time this episode comes out, it will have been 6 months and a day, I think, since the show started, and almost 2.5 years since my blog started, which is even crazier. I'm so happy that you're here with me at this point in the journey, and I'm also just going to name that I'm proud of myself because especially with the blog, I really did not think that I was going to keep it up as long as I have. And there were so many times in the earliest days of it within the first year that I really thought I was just going to scrap it and delete it off the internet forever and just give up. And I'm really glad that I didn't, because we're here now and it's just become more and more fun, but also more structured, and it feels more real to me now. It feels like something that is actually a part of me and what I love to do, and I'm just really grateful for that. And even though I already said it, I'm going to say it again. I'm so grateful that you're here. And if this is your first time here, this is Lead to Gold. This is a podcast devoted to discussing all things growth and wellness. And I love it. I just love talking about these topics. I love exploring the nuances here and, on social media with you all. And that's what I intend to do with every episode. So if this is a realm that you find interesting, that you feel called to, strap in. We're going to have a great little conversation today. And I have some new guests that are lined up to come onto the show pretty soon too. And I'm just so excited for everything that is to come. So without further ado, hi. Today we are going to be talking about the patriarchy, but with several nuances added into that because it's complicated. It's very complicated. This is not going to be a men are trash conversation by any means. So if that is what you immediately think of when you hear the word patriarchy or, demolish the patriarchy, what is it that people say? Smash the patriarchy? I don't know. We all kind of know that it's a thing that is not a great word connotatively. But what I did want to start off with today is just a little bit of a background for where this is coming from in my life right now. And before I even get there, I always do like to just kind of check in and see how we're feeling. This has been a really, honestly, unproductive summer so far for me. If you are unaware, I am a high school English teacher. I'm currently on summer break and I'm still at the beginning of it, but I have been lazy, and I've also kind of been welcoming that. Even though I hate using that word to describe myself, I'm kind of owning it right now because the school year is hard, and this year in particular was really, really hard. So I've just been kind of enjoying long naps or, several naps a day and just kind of lounging around. I think I have worn my sweatpants and this cute little pajama shirt for 2 days straight now, and I am unashamed, fully unashamed. So that's where I'm at right now. I am feeling lazy, but I am also feeling like I do need to get off my ass a little bit. So hopefully after I'm done recording here, I'm going to go hit the gym for the first time in a while and make a good dinner. So I'm excited for all of those things. It's not all unproductive laziness. We've been doing some good things here. But that's been where I've been. And really the thing that kind of struck me as wanting to talk about this today was a pretty lazy and breezy little summer solstice ritual that I did last week. I actually saw the inspiration for it on Instagram, but it was, of course, as most Instagram things are, very brushed up and pretty. It was this woman like in her garden gathering leaves and pulling oracle cards and just like, sitting down with her intentions for the summer and kind of voicing over what she did as a ritual to manifest some intentions for the summer. So anyway, she took all of these leaves and she wrote down her intentions after pulling an oracle card and kind of just like sitting with the energy of the card and figuring out what it meant to her, then taking that and ascribing it to these leaves. So she writes all her goals down, or she writes her intentions down, and then she dug a hole next to her garden and buried the leaves in the hole. So something about that really did stick with me. I loved the idea of it. I love these little like manifestation rituals that I see out there. But the issue was that, it was a bright, beautiful, summery looking day on this gorgeous little Instagram reel. And here at home, it rained all day the first day of summer, and it was like 60 degrees. And I really wanted to go river swimming, but I was like, it is too cold to go river swimming. And I was kind of bummed about it because it's normally so hot and sunny here all summer long. But regardless, it wasn't a summery day on the first day of summer. So I was like, okay, well, I still want to do this ritual, but how should I go about it? So instead of doing all the things that woman did, I just got out like an old receipt and wrote my intentions on the back of it after pulling my oracle card, which is where we start to get into the conversation for today. And if you have any familiarity with oracle cards, they tend to be, I think, more whimsical and less scary almost than tarot cards. I'm not as familiar with tarot, so I'm sure not everybody has that opinion about them, but I just tend to think that they can be a little bit daunting, and oracle cards can be too, but more than it telling a story about your life currently, and I think people who are really experienced with tarot can really get into detail about your past and your present and your future. Oracle cards are more subjective. They're more interpretational. I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean. So you pull the card and you can kind of look up the meanings of that specific card and decide what it means within your own life. So I pulled a card for, what do I need to be focusing on for this summer, for this next phase of life? And I pulled a wall card. So on it was this little image. It almost looked like a medieval circular wall with like a big door on the front of it with an eye on the door. So kind of scary, kind of intimidating, like I normally think of with tarot. And when I initially saw the card, I was like, oh, that gives me a weird feeling. I don't know how I feel about this. But upon looking at the meaning of it, I was like, oh, okay, I like this. I like this a lot. And the book that comes with my oracle deck explained that the wall card symbolizes boundaries, protection, and obstacles. And in pondering on that for a minute, I started to develop how that relates to my current life. And that is where we're getting into the conversation for today. I think the wall card totally centers what I want to say about my relationship to kind of the patriarchy and just making space for myself as a woman in the world. And that's really where I want to go here. So I'm going to get into all the details, but before I do have one last little story time, or maybe a conglomeration of stories from the past year or so for me, because this is quite a revelation in my life. I will start with my mother. Okay. I have always regarded my mom as somebody who is assertive and maybe to some people even touching bitchy territory, but I have always really respected her ability to stand up for herself in most situations, especially with situations regarding work or friendships. She, I think, is so good at, this is going to sound bad, like putting people in their place. And the way that I mean that is by just not letting herself get stepped all over. She's not a pushover. She demands respect, but I don't think she does it in a way that other people don't admire. Maybe the people that she talks to might be like, oh, she's a bitch, or like she's mean. But I've always respected that about her because people respect her and people listen to her. And I think that's a really powerful quality to have. And then there's me. And I don't know how I didn't get any of those traits, but I feel the exact opposite about myself a lot of the time. It's not that I am incapable of standing up for myself, but boy, oh boy, has it taken a long road to get there. I have never been in situations in life where I feel like I can easily say no to someone, or that I can easily say that I don't like this situation, or I don't like the way you're treating me. I don't like the way you're talking to me. More times in my past than not, it would come off as resentfulness later down the road with that person, or I would be just mean to them, but I wouldn't say that they hurt me or that I didn't like how they were treating me. It would just be kind of like a, I'm saying it's one thing, but it's actually another, if that makes sense. I also feel like I have a pattern of immediately noticing that I don't like something, but then just not saying anything about it at all, like ignoring it or sweeping it under the rug, or just trying to save face or save the moment so that other people don't become uncomfortable by my reaction. And that sucks because there are a lot of memories that I can look back on and realize that I really should have said something, but I didn't. And why is that? Is it because I don't want people to think I'm a bitch? Is it because I don't necessarily believe that they were in the wrong, but maybe that I'd be overreacting? I don't know. I suppose the good thing that I can say is that I know I'm not alone in this situation, especially as a young woman. This is a lesson that a lot of us have to learn. And, maybe some of us will choose to not ever really do any work in that area, but that is ultimately what I've come to realize. And this little oracle pulling ritual made me focus in on it. And it's something that I hope to do some work around in the next couple months, maybe even years of my life, because I don't want to be the girl that just gets pushed around and people know that they can swindle me into doing whatever they want me to do, or that I'm just going to be cool about it. That I really don't want to be that person, because I don't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. Before I get off this conversation and into the nitty-gritty, I wanted to just end on one of the intentions that I wrote in this ritual, which was that I will strengthen my integrity and my ability to communicate using it. And what that means to me is being fully and wholeheartedly honest with myself first, and then honest in my communication with other people. And this sounds so weird to me because it's like, as I say that out loud, it sounds harsh, but I don't think it should be. And maybe you don't see it that way, but part of the unlearning that I know I have to do as a young woman is understanding that my core beliefs and my integrity are not false. It's something that I should be honoring. And it's something that other people that I associate with, people that I have to work with every day, people that I love, should also be honoring that. And again, saying it out loud, it feels like a really big ask of myself. But that's what we're here to talk about today. And maybe I'll even use this kind of as a manifestation of getting better at practicing it myself. So, without further ado, I want to talk about the sort of 3 underlying meanings of the wall oracle card, but these are not, it's not specific to the oracle card. It's just practices for life, for as a young woman who is maybe out there also learning to do this work and to stop fucking apologizing and to stop allowing herself to be walked all over. These are some things that we need to look at. So the first of the 3 underlying meanings was boundaries, or, looking at the theme of boundaries in our life. And I am going to go into a little rabbit hole here because I think for a couple years there, maybe 2020, 2021, boundaries had a really, really good rep, like talking about setting boundaries, especially around conversations with family or things that you were comfortable doing with partners or not doing, getting really familiar with setting boundaries. It's a great skill to have, but I do think to a degree we've kind of blown it out of proportion as a society. And I want to talk a little bit about that. When I think of boundary setting, I think of it really just as a simple conversation that needs to be had with a person. And I've talked about this before. I don't know if it was on the podcast or on my blog, but one of the two was the fact that when we set boundaries, or when we are, having that conversation as a society, as a culture, out on the internet, whatever, we have gotten really good about telling people that they need to set boundaries. But what we have not talked about is the fact that then somebody on that receiving end also has to respond to it. And I think there's a lot of nuance there. So when I'm talking about the other person, the person that receives your new set boundary, that can be really uncomfortable for that person. And I'm not defending that person necessarily. I would say most of the time boundaries are made with very good intentions and for very good reasons. But we do also need to consider the fact that the person on the receiving end, even if they are, a good, wholehearted person and they know they've done something wrong, they will still be uncomfortable knowing that they crossed a boundary of yours or that they upset you. It's really not comfortable to authentically sit with the fact that you have upset someone, especially if that person's a friend. And I know this firsthand. I won't get into the details of it, but I had a friend, send me a long text a week or two ago about something that we had talked about or something that I had talked about with her. And she made it abundantly clear that she was made really uncomfortable by that conversation that we shared. And she made it clear that she did not ever want to talk about that again. That's really the basis of what the text was. And I'm pretty sure somewhere in there it even said, I'm not mad at you. I just need to make this clear. I need to set this boundary. It was clear as day. But my first reaction to reading it was panic, in all honesty. It was panic and like, oh God, I fucked up. Like I did something. I made her mad. She hates me. She thinks I'm weird. Oh God, oh God, oh God. And we are like really good friends. So that being my reaction to somebody that I am very, very close with says a lot, I think, on both sides of this conversation, right? It almost ties back to the initial feeling of, just like being a young woman and trying to figure out your place in the world is like, oh God, oh God, oh God, I messed up. I did this. This is my fault. She hates me. None of that is true. None of that is true at all. And even in my responding to her, which I tried to do very calmly, her next response back was like, I'm not upset with you. Like, it's all good. Totally cool. Everything's fine. Just wanted to, bring that up. And it is so hard to have a hard conversation, you guys. Like, it really is. And it's like, it doesn't even have to take very long. But in any case, these are the things with boundaries that we do need to consider and look out for. Part of getting into that world and getting better and more practiced with setting boundaries is also being the person on the receiving end of them. We have to get used to that too. And, you know, I think for the most part, as we've conversed about this openly as a collective, we've gotten much more comfortable with setting the boundaries. We just haven't gotten as comfortable with receiving boundaries from others or being told that something we did made somebody uncomfortable or upset or whatever it may be. The overall point here is just to say that boundaries are a crucial part of making sure that we are standing up for ourselves. But like I just said, we have to be able to kind of take that from others too. If we want this, you know, if we want to really smash the patriarchy, we have to allow all people to be able to do this. And I mentioned earlier that our idea of setting boundaries has been blown a little bit out of proportion. It's not always appropriate to hash out the whole spiel of like, you know, if you do this thing to me again, or if you say this thing to me again, I'm never going to associate with you. Like, we are not friends. I don't want to speak to you. I don't want you in my life, yada, yada, yada. Of course, there are exceptions to this and extreme cases, and I can't speak for everybody, but I found this little post that I really enjoyed. It's from Sirut K. Chawla on Instagram, and I wanted to share it, or at least part of it, just because I do think some of these things have become very prevalent, and I want to just talk through them a little bit. So the post is called "The Problem with Boundaries," but when you get into it, there's a few sort of underlying things that can come out of, I don't want to say making boundary setting a personality trait, but like overusing them or going too far with them. So some of the things that she mentions here is that being a strict boundary person can encourage coldness in your relationships, which I thought was really interesting. She also says a lot of boundaries advice encourages coldness, selfishness, callousness, and ironically being extremely anti-relational. So, you know, if you are going a little bit too far with it or being extremely, extremely strict with it, sometimes that can make the receiving person not want to talk to you about really anything anymore, because it might come off as an idea that like you don't want to have any kind of conversation with them. Another thing that it talks about is that it ignores the reality of human relationships, which I wouldn't entirely agree with the word ignore, but sometimes when we are extreme and strict in our boundary setting, it does kind of turn away from the fact that human relationships are messy and complex and that people mess up, you know? So ultimately what I think that post is trying to get at is just to also keep in mind the fact that people are people. We will mess up. We will cross boundaries, even if we've already been told about them. And that shouldn't immediately end a friendship or a relationship. Of course, like I said, there are exceptions, but just some things to think about there. Okay, the second pillar of this overall theme of the wall card is protection. So as women, as people who are trying to do better about standing up for themselves, about making sure that they're not stepped all over, there's a great self-care practice within the idea of protection or protecting ourselves. And I really do think that there is a large overlap between this idea and the idea of boundaries. Setting boundaries is a form of self-protection. You know, you don't want to invite things into your life that make you uncomfortable, that make you feel stepped on, that make you feel taken advantage of. So this in and of itself is a form of protection. But another way that we can look at this is, I mean, there's all kinds of ways we can look at this, but some things that immediately come to mind for me are just, when we have dealt with something stressful or an interaction that made us feel small or weak or less than, being able to then take care of ourselves and recognize what we did in that situation that we maybe could have done differently. And also, I'll get to this in more detail later, but practicing lots and lots of grace with ourselves. Being able to kind of just hold yourself like your inner mother and say, you did the best you could. I've got you. I'm never going to abandon you. Being a protector for yourself. And that also can include just spending some time with yourself, doing some self-care practices that involve staying at home and just being a good friend to yourself. All of those things can be forms of protection. Asking other loved ones in your life to look out for you. And, if you need a lot of support, who can you trust to kind of be there for you and provide for you if you need it? And this is not a whole complicated conversation, but the last thing I want to say about protection as a theme, especially to my women, is that it is not selfish. It is not selfish to protect yourself. It is not selfish to want protection and to build that within your own life. But I think a lot of that comes from fostering a good relationship with yourself, and that can be hard. The last thing that I want to talk about, and this is going to sort of get us into the rest of the conversation for today, is the third tier in this card pull, which was obstacles. Obstacles. So I almost look at this as the other side, right? The what is getting in our way, literally, in being able to do this work. Well, oh my gosh, how much time do we have here? I tend to look at this, and the way that it settled for me as I was thinking through the card pull and the intentions that I was making and the situations that have occurred in my life recently, there's just so many. Women in our path to liberation, to true, authentic, lasting, sustainable liberation for ourselves, there are so many damn obstacles, it feels like we're never going to get there. But talking about them, acknowledging them, and then trying to figure out what we can do for each other and for ourselves to kind of like ease our way through them is the first step. So what is getting in our way, right? Of being able to take up space and do so proudly and be powerful, but in an integral, honest, unharmful way, right? We don't want toxic power. We just want to be able to claim our own space and to feel like we have authority over ourselves and our lives and our choices, right? And there's a scary word, choices, because we all know that those bodily autonomy choices are being taken away from us actively. There are millions of women in the United States at this point in time who do not have bodily autonomy. This time a year ago, this was a huge conversation. I fully rejected and protested the 4th of July last year because I was so fucking angry. And I don't even live in a state where I can't get an abortion if I don't want to. But the fact that literally millions of women who live in the same country as me cannot. What right do I have to celebrate my freedoms as a woman when not every woman in my country is free? What right does anybody have to celebrate a holiday that's supposed to be for freedom when not every person in this country is free? And they're still not, by the way, so just keep that in mind as we go into this little holiday season. Just saying. Even worse, there are places in the country where now birth control is being debated. Can we even have that? these are just some of the obstacles that we're facing. But in essence, I mean, we have so many systems that are actively working to hold us down. And lately for me, it has just felt like the more and more we are stretching out as women, and the more that the queer community is doing to stretch themselves out and earn their rights that they so rightfully deserve. And the more that we are able to gain freedoms, the more afraid our opponents are getting. And they're doing everything in their power to take our power away. That's how it feels. We get more taken away. We reach for more, they pull our arms back, right? Another smaller thing, which I've already alluded to many times, but we're going back into kind of our more local environment, is just allowing people in our lives to also hold us down, right? To make us feel small. And I want to give an example here because it's something that I've noticed in my waking life, like I said, many times. Things that I should have spoken up about but didn't. Just the other day, I was out at the river with my partner and I was like laying out my towel and I was sitting on a rock and it was really nice. You know, I was like in my bathing suit. The sun was out. It felt really nice. I was having a great time. And then out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a teenage boy with his phone out. And I just kind of like looked. I didn't really pay attention, but then I saw that my partner like made a weird face. And then like in the direction of that boy. And then I looked back and he was walking away. But I turned back to my partner because I didn't quite understand what was going on. And I was like, what was that face for? And he was like, he was just taking photos of you. And I was like, okay. Why didn't you say anything? And I like wanted to be mad at my partner for not saying anything. But then I also, you know, for a second, I had to admit to myself, like I saw his phone out. I saw kind of what he was doing, but I didn't want to immediately assume that he was taking photos of me. And then I got mad at myself. I'm like, why didn't I say anything? Wait a second. Like, I don't need to dish this out on my partner. Why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I stand up for myself and be like, hey, kid, who are you taking photos of? What's the point of that? You know? Why didn't I say anything? And this is just the latest example of many. Anyone who knows me well knows that I've struggled a great deal with a coworker this year that has said some shitty things and made me feel very, very much less than. And even though he was the one, for the most part, instigating and being shitty, I was the one who routinely apologized in all of these situations. And I'm giving away my power by doing that. And I know I'm not the only person out there that routinely does that and then feels like shit about it. But if we want to keep making strides in our own collective liberation, this is not just for women. This is for crushing the patriarchy, all of it, for demolishing the entire fucking system. If we want to keep making strides, those of us out there who routinely apologize and give other people our power and don't recognize our own, and this is a tough love moment. I'm giving it to myself. The issue with continuing and repeating this behavior is that we're never going to get the power that we so desperately deserve if we keep doing this in the smaller micro examples in our lives, like the one I just mentioned. And then last but certainly not least, of the many obstacles that we as women have to kind of overcome in order to rise up and claim our power and our space in this world, is holding ourselves down. This might be the biggest one of them all, which is really problematic. We have been held down by other people. I do think we inherently do it to ourselves. Immediately assuming that you're not going to be able to ask for a raise. I'm not in a job position where I really can ask for one, just because that's the nature of teaching. But like, there are so many women in my life who have told me that they would never ask for a raise, even though they probably very well deserve one. They would never ask because they're too scared. They don't think they deserve it. Or there's so many other examples. I was just watching Shiny Happy People on Amazon Prime, and this gets into a completely different conversation about religious trauma, so I'm not going to get into that whole wormhole because it's a big one. But an example that I see there is the whole scandal of Josh Duggar hiding child pornography on his work computer, right? And he's been married to his wife for years, like probably over a decade at this point. Yeah. And so many people look at this and are like, well, why doesn't she just leave him? Like, he's a criminal. He has child pornography on his computer, and he's admitted to molesting both of his sisters, several of his sisters, right? So like, why is she still with him? And again, that gets into religious trauma, and they're not supposed to leave their husbands, right? But that gets into a whole other conversation that I want to go down, but I'm going to save it. We do this to ourselves, right? We fully believe that we cannot leave situations in which we can. And I'm going to clarify really quickly. I am not saying that Josh Duggar's wife did this to herself. This is very much not her fault. But the thing that I'm trying to reach for here is in Shiny Happy People, they talk about the fact that, like, wow, if she was only able to go beyond the norms and the expectations of her religion and realize that she could very easily get a divorce. She has the resources. Imagine the book she could write about her whole experience if she only knew that she could. If she only believed in herself enough to know that the world would not come crashing down if she left her terrible husband. Just a thought. Women in our society, you know, as many obstacles as we do have to overcome, we also have the ability to leave shitty situations. Maybe not all of them, maybe not right away, but we can do that for ourselves. There are so many resources. We just think it's going to be too hard. We think that we're not strong enough. We think that we're not capable. Maybe some of us think that we're not even worthy of a better life or a better outlook of ourselves, you know? And that breaks my heart, but I'm in the same boat in a lot of ways. Clearly, as women, not just in the United States, across the globe, step into more collective freedom, because I do think it's fair to say, overall, we are advancing. Things are not getting worse for us. Here and there they are. Like I said, things are being pulled away as we are trying to step out of a patriarchal society. But as we're doing all of this work, clearly there is a lot to unpack and a lot to sit in discomfort with. This is not easy. This is not easy work. And I do, as a side note, love that I so often see in my communities the talk about breaking generational cycles, because I truly believe this generation, or these few generations that are living right now, are the ones that are finally breaking the things that have been plaguing us for thousands and thousands of years. Other generations broke other things, but we are the ones that are really reaching for equality and achieving equality as best as we possibly can. And that's not equality across men and women. That is across all spheres. This is an intersectional conversation. There's a lot to unpack. This is really hard work. Really, 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 really hard work. As we go through it, if you are someone out there who is also trying to step into your power and feel comfortable doing so and feel worthy of doing so, how can you help yourself and how can you help other women in your life do that? We need to celebrate all the wins. Celebrate the fuck out of them. Celebrate when you or a girlfriend sets a boundary, no matter how small. Because it's so hard. We have never, ever been taught to do this. we are the first generation, truly. I'm borderline Gen Z millennial, whatever you want to call it. Those two generations, we are the first to truly practice this. And I say this mainly, practice this as women, because not too long ago, we did not have the right to speak up for what we wanted. We didn't have that power, right? And when I'm talking about celebrating, being able to set boundaries, being able to protect yourself, doing what is best for you, I think even the smallest of things can be celebrated, or should at least be noted and appreciated. Maybe you didn't do all that you wanted to do. Maybe you didn't say everything that you wanted to say, but you did something. And that is a step in the right direction. That's something that I've been telling myself a lot lately is, as I've been more aware of this in my life and trying to practice boundary setting, this is something that I do often practice with myself is like, well, I didn't say everything I wanted to say. I wasn't as assertive as I wanted to be, but I said something, right? Even if I said sorry after, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable, or I don't want to overstep, but, these are things that we practice in time. And I hope to say that one day I don't apologize for setting a boundary, but I did it. I still did it. It was still heard, right? And in the same vein, another thing to practice and another thing to offer others when they're doing this work is so much grace. So much grace, especially when you don't speak up. When I have a moment like the one on the river the other day where that kid was taking pictures of me, initially I did get really mad at myself. I'm like, God, why didn't I say something? But I had to step back and just be okay with it. There's nothing I could do after the fact to change that. But practice grace with yourself and acknowledge that, you're still here, you're still safe, you're okay, and you're going to move on. You're going to have another opportunity to practice this and get better with it, because that's life. And then the last really big thing that I want to say, and this is where I'm intending to bring absolutely everybody into this conversation. I know that I focused a lot on women today, and the reason for that is because I think we are the ones that have the most brunt work to do in becoming more assertive and claiming our power. No offense to my dudes out there, but you already have a lot of power. And this is something that we need to, as women, work on. If we are all to be equal and treated equally, these are things we need to do. But here's what I'm going to say. All of us, every single person out there, I don't care who you are, I don't care how you identify, we all need to recognize that the patriarchy hurts everyone. Every single person. If you are a person breathing, listening to this podcast, the patriarchy is hurting you. If you are a wealthy cis white man, the patriarchy is hurting you. Let me tell you why. Because when we are working as a collective, obviously there are tiers to that system, the way that we are now. But even the wealthiest white man out there, even Elon Musk, right? I don't know if he's the richest man alive. I don't care. Personally, don't follow him. Don't care about what he does. But that man, I guarantee, cannot be rightfully and authentically honest with his true core emotions. He cannot express effectively the things that he wants to express, the things that he desires ultimately. I guarantee that man is not living his truest, best potential. He's not. We know he's not. When things are as unbalanced as they seem to be at this point in time, and they are, it hurts everybody because even the people who are in power are not living up to their truest, best, most fulfilled potential because they are actively holding people down. And why? Because they're scared? I think it has something to do with that. Because they're fearful, because they don't want to give up their power, because they're afraid that they will be less than if we all share the same space. That's a lot of fear to hold on to. Imagine living a life where you know that the majority is more powerful than you. Because these wealthy white men are not the majority by any means. The minority, we don't feel very powerful all the time, but we are powerful in the masses. And that's fucking scary to them. Imagine living your life with all of that fear on your back, right? There's a lot at stake for them. And when you're holding on to all of that, when you are desperately clinging to your power that you maybe don't rightfully deserve, hot take, not a hot take, I don't know. When you're holding on to that so fiercely, you can't live a full, fulfilled, happy, successful, enjoyable life. There's no way. So that's what I mean when I say that the patriarchy hurts everybody. The system of imbalance that we're living in absolutely does nothing, no advantage, nothing whatsoever for anybody. So why are we still holding on to this illusion, right? And there's so many side notes that I could get into there that I'm not going to get into today because this episode has already gone on long enough, but we'll get there in time. This podcast isn't going anywhere. In the meantime, I would love to know how this is landing for you. If you think I've left anything out or other thoughts that you would love to contribute to a follow-up conversation, I'm sure there will be one. And all in all, this work is something that everybody can do. We just have different little spaces to fill, perhaps different areas of the work that can be done. If you are a wealthy cis white man, maybe your work is holding space for people who don't have as many as you do, right? Who don't have as many powers as you do, who don't feel powerful, holding the space, donating, calling out oppression. There's so many things you can do, no matter who you are. And that goes all the way back to a conversation that we had in January about recognizing your gifts and what you are capable of doing and how you can help your collective community, because that's ultimately the only way that we are going to smash the patriarchy, as they say. So my ultimate message to anybody out there is to recognize your power, recognize what you do have. And if you are like me, if you are somebody who is actively trying to stand up for themselves more and stop being such a pushover, and then also stop getting mad at yourself for when you don't do everything 100% correctly and that you didn't say the thing that you wish you said, slow down and practice grace. It's all good. It's all good. I know that the vast majority of people out there are looking out for me, are looking out for each other. And maybe if you're not doing your absolute best right now, it is in your intent to be a good person. So these are the conversations that we need to have, and like I just said, if you have anything that you want to add on or discuss alongside what we've discussed today, DM me on Instagram. My link for that is always in the show notes. Email me, check out my blog, get in touch. I would love to talk to you all more about these things. So that's that. And as per usual, we always finish each episode with a card from the healing deck of We're Not Really Strangers. So we're going to do that really quick. I'm going to just pull a card at random. Normally I take them all out of the deck, but I'm just going to take one straight out of the top today. So here we go. Ooh, okay, I like this one. This one takes us right back to center. Let's do a little protection practice for ourselves. What is your body telling you today? And by the way, if you haven't heard me do this spiel before, if you feel called to journal about this, go ahead and grab a little journal, grab a pen, and let's talk about it. So what is your body telling you today? Well, mine is, like I said at the beginning of this episode, mine is feeling lazy, and I'm also on my period. I know I said that last week, but I'm actually on my period now. So we're just taking it slow. I think my body wants to be fed a little bit better, so I'm planning on making a really good, scrumptious, filling dinner tonight. And I think I could also go for a little workout. So my body is ultimately telling me, you know, we've been lazy, we've been taking it easy, but let's move around a little bit. Let's start feeling a little bit more rejuvenated and freshened up, because I've just been chilling in my house for like 3, 4, or 5 days, and it's time to get out. So in any case, not to rush off or anything, but that's what I'm going to go do now because my body's calling for it. How about you? What's your body telling you today? Thanks for being here, as I said, and I am just so glad to be able to have a community to converse about these things with. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to hear from you. I'll be back here in another 2 weeks, and I'm very excited to say I think it's going to be the first episode with a guest in quite some time, so I won't spoil it, but it's going to be a good one. I was writing out the questions for this person, and I was getting a little emotional, so we'll see how that goes. In other words, talk to you soon. I love you so much, and have a great rest of your day, whatever you're moving on to next. Bye.